Hello and welcome back, my dear listeners. I hope y'all are having a fantastic Friday. I'm sure I'm going to have a great Friday. I hope. Let's see. We will see, is what I'm trying to say. We'll see. Anyway, have a great day. And I hope y'all have a fantastic weekend. That said, today's video is a collection of 5 creepy encounters. So these would be encounters with real people, not spirits, ghosts, apparitions, aliens, anything like that. Actual, real, living people. These are always good stories to listen to, and there's always a fantastic message, and that is, be careful. That cannot be overstated nowadays with all the craziness going on. So I hope you guys are ready. Let's get into it. Again, these are 5 creepy encounter stories straight from Reddit. Enjoy. This is something that I didn't realize the severity of until I was older. My mom had left me and my brother home alone. It was midday. My brother was 12, maybe 13, so I was 9 years old. I was watching him play Xbox in our living room. He had his headset on and was talking to his friends. There was a knock from the door in our carport. I run and answer the door without looking. It's a grown man that I've never seen before. We are separated by the screen door, which at the time was unlocked. He asks, "Are your parents home?" Horror washes over me. First of all, he's knocking from the carport, which is strange in and of itself. A stranger would knock on the front door. And our carport is empty. We only had one car, and my mother had taken it. This man knew that my parents weren't home. So I'm afraid, but I don't know why. But I am scared. Immediately, my brother in the other room comes to mind. I've never had a father figure. My brother has always been the one who has made me feel safe. He was the strongest person to me in the whole world. Someone who could protect me in any situation. How most people would regard their father, I think. I feel as though I can barely speak. Wide-eyed, I manage to stutter out, "No, but my, big brother's here." Without even a moment's pause, this man reaches for the screen door and starts to open it. Like an act of God, divine intervention, an arm reaches out from behind me over my shoulder and grabs the door. My brother pushes past me, holding the door, forcing the man back with his presence, out into the carport, and closes the door behind him. This man tells my brother he was looking to buy some crappy old swing set that was in our front yard at the time. My brother comes back in without saying anything to me, puts on his headset, and continues playing. I sit down as well and continue watching him. I don't believe we ever told our mom. It pretty much fades from my memory, but as I've gotten older, it's become one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. Creepy not so much because of what happened, but what could have happened. Unnerving how absolutely oblivious we were. I like to think the man was planning to lock me in a room, rob the place, and leave, but people can be so evil. I have read a lot of these stories, and I couldn't remember if I had had any somewhat odd encounters. But when I was tidying my room this weekend, I found my old diary from when I was around 9 or 10. Before I moved to Berlin, my mom and I lived in Sheffield. Because of this, we sometimes met some of her friends when we went back to Sheffield. This time, though, they came to visit us, and we decided to spend the day out. Now, I had never had a creepy encounter before, but on this day, I'd had 2. First, we went to the park. Me and my little sisters were all playing together, having a good time, whilst my mom and dad were chatting to their 2 friends, one of which was my fairy godmother. We're not religious, so my mom just always called her that. After a while, a panicked woman and her kid walked into the park and told my mom and other parents that a weird man was walking around asking people if they wanted to touch his snake. But as she said it in German, though, it was clear that it wasn't a euphemism in this context. This man had a real snake and was carrying it around, offering people to hold it. Apparently, this included offering it to this little girl who was crying her eyes out. My mom decided that it would be best if we got a move on, but my fairy godmother wanted a coffee, so we split up into 2 groups. My mom, fairy godmother, and myself, and my dad went with his mate and my 2 little sisters, who went to a different park further away. We went off to find a little cafe, and they both got a hot drink. We headed off to meet up with the rest, and I tripped. My mom and fairy godmother had walked in front of me, but they didn't notice me fall. Instead, a man grabbed my arm and held me tight. At first I thought he was trying to help me get up, but he was just holding my arm tightly. I completely froze and didn't say anything, so I had now been separated from my mom and I couldn't see her anymore. The man just held on to me and I didn't know what to do. My mom was about to cross the road when she noticed that I wasn't next to her and turned around, and she couldn't see me. She called my name and I just looked up at the man and he let go, which then made me fall back on the ground. My mom called me again and the two of them started walking back to where I was on the floor, right past the man who was trying to nonchalantly jog past her. She saw that I was lying on the floor completely white and asked me what happened. As soon as I told her, my fairy godmother ran around the corner to where the man had been ever so casually jogging, leaving me with my mom who was holding me. Apparently when she had looked around the corner, the man was legging it down the road and was already on the opposite side of the road, and my fairy godmother, not knowing Berlin at all, didn't know where he had run off to. Overall, nothing ever came of it, and seeing how I had forgotten that this even happened for nearly 10 years, I feel like I might have gotten off easy. A few years ago, a friend and I were hanging out at a park around 11 p.m. All the lights were off since the park was technically closed, and we were doing a bit of underage drinking and having a fairly fun night. After having struck up a conversation with some random people who had since left, we were both just kind of vibing separately. This park was flanked on the north and east side by streets, and the south and west side by mountains. We were at the far south end when I noticed a banging noise coming from the north end. I looked, and there was a man who seemed to be banging something fairly hard against the curb. The bangs were pretty loud and were echoing all over. This park is in the middle of a neighborhood, however with it being late, there really wasn't anyone else around. I stared at him for a while, and then tried to get my friend's attention, all the while the banging continued. I turned to look at my friend who was in her own world doing something, and when I looked back towards the man, he had stopped banging and was now standing straight up and looking at me. Freaked out, I finally got my friend's attention right when the man began to run at us. We ran towards her car, which was parked in the southeast corner of the park on the street, looking back to see the man still running. We hurried into her car, and she began driving south, not realizing that this street ended just about 1/8 of a mile up the hill after some apartments. We got to the end of the street, and she began to try and turn around, when I saw out the back window that the car the man was originally standing next to was coming toward us. He attempted to block us in the dead end with his car, and in the passenger seat, I saw a young woman who looked as if she had been crying. I still remember her blonde curly hair and smeared mascara. We finally got away and turned onto the main road. Panicked, we called the police to tell them what had happened. Parking about 1/4 of a mile away, we saw 2 cop cars do a quick search of the area before ultimately not finding anything and leaving. To this day, I have no idea what that man was doing, why he came after us, or why the girl he was with seemed to be so distraught. I can only hope that it ended well. My childhood was spent in Santa Ana, California. I have pretty good memories there before my dad moved us down to Texas. There is one weird instance that I remembered, so I asked my mom about it and will now share it with you. We lived in this decently sized apartment complex. We were on the 4th floor, but there were up to 5 to 6 floors that I can remember. One of our upstairs neighbors was this beautiful Chinese lady named Sheila, with the cutest Pomeranian puppy. She was young, thin, had long black hair, and the prettiest eyes, and she wore the prettiest clothing. She would always call my sister and over to play with her puppy. Sometimes she would invite us inside her home. I remember her apartment seemed strange to me. All of her walls had shelves lined with porcelain dolls that I thought were very creepy. She also had Hello Kitty and Friends plushies all over her couch, and even on her floor. She had a huge pink frilly rug. I remember that as a child, something about her apartment seemed off, but I didn't care because I loved having a pretty older friend with a dog. Sheila took a particular liking to me. I'm a Mexican American, but everyone has told me that I look Asian. This will be relevant later. Anywho, she kept on telling me I looked just like her porcelain dolls and that I was so beautiful. I was flattered because I looked up to Sheila, almost like an older, cool sister. My sister and I started frequenting Sheila's apartment more often, mainly to play with the cute puppy. Her boyfriend started coming over more often as well. I remembered thinking he was too old for her and too ugly. I would catch him staring at me a lot, and at that time, I couldn't understand why, but he made me feel uncomfortable. One time I got into a huge fight with the neighborhood kids and my sister, so I stopped playing with them and decided to pay Sheila a visit. Sheila seemed off. Like she didn't really want me to be there. She had these pink see-through glasses, and I remember I could see purple makeup. But now that I think about it, it might have been a bruise. From the background, I could hear her boyfriend say, "Let her come in, I have a painting for her." Sheila reluctantly let me in. The entire apartment was dark, all the blinds were closed, and it was super messy inside. Her boyfriend then handed me a painting he made of Winnie the Pooh. It wasn't very well drawn, and I don't really even like Winnie the Pooh that much, but he says, "For you, you are cute like Winnie the Pooh." I say thank you and quickly forget, and start looking for the puppy. Once I find the puppy, I begin to pet it and cuddle it, when I hear from behind something that I now know as moaning. I turn to see, and Sheila and her boyfriend are full-on making out. I remember it very clearly because I had never seen anyone, for example my parents, kissing so sloppy and with tongues. I felt embarrassed and just looked away and continued to play with the dog and pretend that I wasn't paying attention. But it continued for so long. I turned around once more, and he was fondling her breasts. At this point, I felt very weird and just tell her that I needed to go and leave. Fast forward a few days later and it's my birthday. Sheila comes over to drop off my birthday gift, and it's a porcelain doll. I pretended to like it and thanked her, and then go back to playing with my friends. I can hear my mom talking with her at the doorway, and my mom keeps saying no over and over again. She seems like she's getting angry, but still trying to keep her composure. Finally, she shuts the door and gets back to the party. A few days later, I tell my mom that I'm going to go to Sheila's to play with her dog. She tells me no, and to go play with the neighborhood kids instead, and she doesn't want me going with Sheila anymore. I don't think much of it, and I go to play with the kids instead. Then fast forward a few weeks, and I stop by at Sheila's just to see that the apartment is empty. The blinds are open, and I can see the apartment is empty inside. Fast forward to today, and my mom tells me something that shocked me. That day at my party, Sheila was asking if she could take me to Beijing with her, that she would buy me whatever I wanted, and that she just wanted to show her family how a Mexican kid looked so much like them. I guess because I looked Asian in her eyes? She kept telling my mom that I could be a model, and that she could possibly help me become one as well. My mom thought she was joking at first, but Sheila was persistent. My mom said she basically had to shove her out the door because she wasn't leaving or taking no for an answer. I'm not sure what Sheila wanted with me, if that was even her real name. I just hope wherever she is, that she's okay. I hope she never truly meant to hurt me. I often like to walk around as the sun starts to rise so that I can look at the pretty sky and have a chance to relax for a little while before the rest of the world around me starts to wake up. I particularly like to go on these walks when the weather is nice and warm so that I can walk on the bike path, with trees and the lake to keep me company. This has always helped me to feel much more connected to nature. One morning, around 5:30, I walked out my front door and was feeling really positive, excited, and peaceful. I made my way down towards the lake and bike path, listening to music and smoking a bowl as I walked. The sky was still that deep medium blue that it gets when the sun will be up in the next 45 minutes or so. I walked the few blocks to the bike path and turned south to head towards an area that felt about as magical as a place could, considering how close it was to the train tracks. I finished the bowl I'd packed a few minutes before my feet were officially on the bike path, and I started looking for a place to repack it. I looked ahead and to my right, and find that there is still a set of picnic tables, as there had been a couple of years prior when I'd left for college. I was about 10 feet away from the picnic table when a man sat up on the bench. Apparently he had been lying down on the bench. He looked at me, smiled, and stood up. I hesitated, worried about what was about to happen. He walked over to me, holding his arms out, slid his hands between my arms and my sides, then to the small of my back, as he moved in closer and hugged me. I moved away, and he opened his mouth to talk. "It's been so long, my friend." As he spoke, I realized his voice sounded familiar. We'd walked together along the bike path for a few minutes before he started veering off the path a bit. I stood there on the path, not sure what he had in mind. He started trying to pressure me to follow him closer to the water, to a more secluded place, and as he talked more, I took in more of his body language. I then realized I knew where I had met him. He had been that creepy 40-something-year-old who had been living on my floor in my dorm during my second year of college and had been sexually harassing my roommate's then girlfriend. Well then, there you go. That was 5 creepy encounter stories straight from Reddit. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all can take something from this, and that is, don't trust people that you run into randomly, on the street. That's a bad way to put that. I don't want to tell you not to trust people. I just want to tell you to be selective and careful on who you do trust. That's a better way to put it. There we go. Also avoid situations where, you're a child. That's pretty much the end of that. Just avoid situations where you are a child. That's all. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed, please do consider hitting that thumbs up button. Also, if you really enjoy my narrations, please consider subscribing to the channel. That really does help me a lot. I am trying to grow this thing, and all of my subscribers are amazing people, and I know you want to be an amazing person, so subscribe button right there, please. Lastly, if you really feel up to it, please do leave me a comment letting me know how you're doing, what you thought of the video. That means a lot to me, and I'd love to hear from you. Down in the description below, you will find links for my subreddit, my Facebook, and my Twitter, as well as a link where you can submit stories to me for me to read on my channel. Please take advantage of it if you have anything you'd like to see on my channel. I promise you I'll read it. Absolutely promise. All that said, friends, I hope you have a fantastic day and a fantastic weekend. I will see you on the next video, but until then, I hope that you simply sleep well.